Hello and welcome. Doing a video narration to summarize my research. My research was done on eligibility and school interpretation. Basically, an overview of the MSHSAA, that's the Missouri State High School Activities Association, their eligibility requirements for students and athletes, and interpretations from different schools regarding citizenship. So my research focus was looking at the overview of athletics specifically, not going into activities necessarily, and then comparison of 3 area high schools, 2 large in the same district. I consider Blue Spring School District a rival school since I attended Lee Summit High School back in the 90s. And then I wanted to look at a small school. This is Mound City High School. I went to the MSHSAA site on their football state brackets, and Mound City was the state champion in 8-man football, so I consider that a small school. So that's where I went. I actually wanted to get Rockhurst information, but I just can't figure out how I couldn't get a response. I tried to go through the athletic director, several emails, and could not get through. I also tried to go via a route through a parent because all parents have to sign permission, and I could not get that, mainly because the parent was also taking her son to college. Several sons phased differently. So anyways, all that to say, I could not get Rockhurst, a private school that competed against Lee Summit and Blue Springs, also an area of contention as far as eligibility. So what is MSHSAA? Again, the Missouri State High School Activities Association, with the philosophy and mission. I always like to get the broader picture, the purpose, the reasoning behind all the rules. It's like looking at the Declaration of Independence for the purpose, right? The theory, what backs up, and then the Constitution are its parts and pieces. So this philosophy about interscholastic activities complements the secondary curricular program, educational social experiences for students and school community, which result in positive learner outcomes, contributing to the good citizenship, sportsmanship, and equitable competition. So again, equitable being the key word as far as what I'm looking at, as far as application of eligibility. And then mission, participation, value of it, sportsmanship, team play, etc. Make positive contributions to the community. Kind of a similar statement, but to support the democratic principles of our state and nation. I thought that was an interesting statement, and I'll actually get to that at the end. An overview as far as the sections of MSHSAA, that's how I pronounce it. Section 2 and Section 3 is where I'm going to be focusing for student athletic bylaws. So what activities are accountable to MSHSAA? Sections 2 and 3 are about athletics. Sections 2, again, you can see broader, for all students in activities. And then 4 is for our music, theater, speech and debate, Scholar Bowl, cheer and dance teams. I was honestly surprised robotics wasn't on there, but I can understand why that would be different. I'm going to focus on sections 2 and 3 today. Basically, section 2 by their subsections, which then have subsection to the subsections to the subsections. MSHSAA is quite extensive. I have indicated asterisks, double asterisks on areas that I'm going to kind of drill into in this overview and that I did in my research paper. While each one of that is not double asterisks, I would consider fairly straightforward. For instance, definition of a bona fide student or semesters of eligibility, violation of bylaws, assumed names, stuff like that. I'm going to bypass that slide and get into some details. Now, bona fide student, I have it still up here, but really the big picture is you want a student that's participating or regularly attends class, established residency, and meet minimum academic requirements. That's the gist of what they want. Okay, they didn't mention citizenship in that bona fide student, but down right in the next section, they do mention citizenship. And they mention the local school discipline as far as detentions, suspensions, unexcused absences, and expulsions. And even they touch on felonies. I didn't include that. Oh no, felonies are down in law enforcement. If charges are filed, the student's ineligible until sentence fulfilled. Okay. Each school has the ability to go further, but that's the minimum, or these are the minimums. I wanted to pull out the statement for academic requirements. The academic requirements are pretty straightforward, but I like the philosophy. Mainly, I was a student athlete, but I was a scholar athlete. So I had strengths in both academic and athletics. Now, just because I don't like this statement at all as a teacher, it says low academic ability, and I think that is not the right statement, although it could apply to some that have some disabilities. But just because a student is not successful at school does not mean that they have low academic ability. I will take issue with that. Or average or above average ability. Typically, things that get in the way of education on a broader scale are how many times the student has moved in their education through grade school, junior high, and high school. The stability of the family home, right, allows a more contiguous or steady education where you don't have any gaps. But all that aside, basically, it should be for all enrolled students making appropriate progress towards graduation and otherwise in good standing. Basically, there is value, right? Value educational experience that all students at any performance level can receive from participating in interscholastic activities. So I like the statement, I don't like the statement, but that's it. This is more on academic requirements, the semester prior and the current semester, about enrollment. It doesn't say anything about grades specifically, but it's assumed that you're passing. That could be a D- or above. Other sections, subsections to the subsection, issues on summer school, 5th day requirement, incomplete courses, alternative schedules, 7th and 8th grade requirements. Undue influence, I forgot. I mean, when I was first thinking about that, I didn't even think about this, but this is huge for those students that are phenomenal athletes, and they show that early on in their life. I have a friend that has a 6'5", 12-year-old who loves to play basketball. Talk about a kid that's going to be on the radar of everybody, and he is only 12. So undue influence, they have definitions of it, but again, it's to protect the students. Descriptions of undue influence: receiving anything of value, student or parent, getting tuition waived or reduced, payments of tuition by someone other than the family members, if they get overpaid for services rendered, the offer or acceptance of school privileges, for instance, that's not given to all people, parking spots, right? Tardies, I don't know what else, but something like that. Inducement to change residence. So if you are asked, right, that's an undue influence. If I'm asked to move to a different district to compete, or if I try to convince someone to move into the district, that is undue influence, and it jeopardizes eligibility. As far as specific to athletics, I'm going to look at eligibility requirements, essential, oh wait, maybe not, age requirements, amateur, etc. Well, let's see what I've got. That goes into like 30 sections, so through 19, and then these basically sports specific, so I'm not going to look at those. So let's see what we've got. Must maintain amateur status, 3.6. Activities that forfeit your amateur status, accepting monetary compensation, receiving an award that exceeds a certain amount, capitalizing on athletic fame to receive money, signing a professional contract or playing contract, and then you should not represent the school to endorse a product without the consent of the school. So those things could forfeit your amateur status. And if you have the amateurs don't maintain amateur status, you do not get to play interscholastic sports. Residence and transfer requirements, another huge section of sections upon subsections upon subsections. Essentially, I mean, it seems like, hey, if you live in this district boundary, you should play at the school designated by that boundary. But there are exceptions. Special learning centers, for instance. I would call it a 365-day buffer, but if you, I mean, I believe it's for the senior year. If your parents move, you might get that exception to stay within that district for your senior year. But you have to get a waiver for it. So these transfers of schools are ineligible for 365 days. However, there are 10 exceptions, although I have 9 listed, so that's interesting. If you're going to transfer schools, you have to have the full family change residence. You can transfer at promotion, say from 8th grade to 9th grade. You can transfer from a non-member school, so non-member of the MSHSAA Athletic or Activities Association. Transfer from an unaccredited school. So some schools become unaccredited and they lose their extracurriculars, so you can move or go play at another school. Reorganizing a district, that applies actually to Lee Summit School District because we have 3 high schools within it. And the boundaries change. Boarding schools, I'd look a little bit more into that. I can't recall the details of that. Hardship for parents, having to move, having to relocate, and then these waivers to get exceptions. And you can apply for those, and they are approved by an administrator at MSHSAA, and then for exchange students. These 3 sections, sports participation and contact while participating, either during the school year, right, while not participating during the school year, or during the summer. To me, these sections are all about the non-school competition. So the prevalence of the club sport, club softball, club baseball, club soccer, club volleyball, extremely competitive, year-round sports, virtually year-round, right? They're same season, same sport, and then same season, different sport. They have different regulations. There are very few students, but they're out there. Olympic development teams, U.S. national teams, junior Olympic teams. There are evaluation events. So I picture baseball players and basketball players and football players attending these by private organizers, and then sports-specific instruction by a private organizer. These themes are pretty consistent. This is during the school year while you're playing the sport. Now, while you're not playing the sport, it's still the same topics, right? Events, sports-specific, and then out-of-season sports conditioning. So you could be playing basketball and do some football conditioning, which is weird, but you can. And then winter and spring no-contact periods are defined. And then during the summer, you've got limits of contact for high school and junior high students. There's a dead period. All things that you're doing for the school must be voluntary, not required to make a team. You have to maintain your amateur status. If you attend a camp, you must pay for the camp fee. It cannot be paid by someone else. That's the undue influence. You can participate in school-sponsored summer sports instruction camps or non-school sponsored. And then any school-owned equipment can only be used at school events. Okay? Comparison